Hey, bro, you want to buy the cell phone? 500 minutes, bro. Come on, man. $5. How you can get it for 5?
I told you.
You always messing it
Well,
up.
give me my Metro card.
Locked up, they won't let me out. And I had a long day in court, stressed me out. Won't give me a bail, it can't get me out. Now I'm headed to the county, gotta do a bid here. I'm used to living luxurious, I don't wanna live here. The walls is gray, the clothes is orange. The phones is broke, the food is garbage. Lot of niggas is living with these circumstances. SP's the same, I still murk your manses. Drug money, the rap money, work advances. Ran and told I should've murked the Kansas. Got popped for a murder attempt. Knocked me on D block when I was burning the hemp. Had a brick in the stash, hope they don't take it to a further extent. Locked up and they won't let me out. When I hit my cell block, know the threat me out.
They know how I'm coming, real bitch in the flesh. Who the fuck she gon' check? She be talking that shit, talking out of her neck. But blood on her dress. Bitches be mad when they see Cardi step in the spot. Said that you bought it, we know that you not. I'ma pull up on bitches as soon as I drop. Bought a new board, now I could be yeah. Bitches in my business, they tryna plot. Hoes popping shit like they hot, but they not. Just flirting the wrist, the paddock, the watch.
Testing, ABC.
And we're on.
Yeah. It's been a while since I've said this. We've had a gap.
Yes.
I'm actually excited to do this intro.
A little gap.
Hopefully I mess it up. What's going on, y'all? It's your girl Jodie with the TV Takeover, host of My Live Rural, all the way live and podcast Deez Nuts. And to my right is the bestie,
Wendy. How you doing, y'all?
Hey guys, welcome episode
27.
Bengti. We just
Child, let it go. Marq, do you speak Spanish?
Do you speak Spanish?
I do not speak Spanish.
Creole.
Nope.
Nothing.
Nothing.
No.
Do you-
Teach me
English,
something.
that's it.
English, that's it.
English.
Okay,
that's it. Welcome, our guest, Marq, y'all, from Chainless Change.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on and speaking to us about a very important topic.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So Marq is the director for the outreach for Change. Tell us a little bit about that.
So Chainless Change, we are a tax-exempt organization. We serve the Tri-County area, and we assist involved in the criminal system. Normally I say criminal justice if I don't have a time to explain, but it's a criminal system. There's no justice in that system at all. And we assist people who are involved in various ways with navigating through the system and just becoming reacclimated to society.
Wow.
So guys, we have an amazing show for you. But before we kind of jump into all of that juice, we actually have some really exciting things to share with you guys. I'll let you tell them, 'cause
So we have another layer of Podcast These Nuts, where we really wanted to focus on Black female authors in particular. And do a little story time with you guys, a little ASMR as you listen to us, a little feel good. So that is going to be coming. I'm not sure when we're going to start, hopefully next month.
That's the goal.
That's the goal, to start next month, you know, where we read with you guys. It's kind of like a podcast book club. Per se, where we read through the books, we discuss them, and then also, hopefully, if we can bring the authors in, we'll also have some discussion time with the and talk to you guys about really great books that we are reading, and hope to encourage and inspire you to get those books and read as well.
And we also want to hear from you guys. You want to know what books that maybe you've read that you would love to have us narrate. Now, here's the thing. Wendy does something that I think I need to start doing, because every time I open up a good book to read, I fall asleep. It's not that I don't want to read the book or that it's not a good book, but I just get really sleepy.
I'm not gonna lie, that happens to me too.
Right. So Wendy says, Jodie, I do audiobooks. That's the only way I'm able to go through as many books as I do. So I'm like, you know what? That's a good idea. So that was one of the things that kind of initiated or launched the idea or seeded the idea for us to add extra layer, and I'm super excited.
Yes.
So once again, high five, bestie.
Yes, it's gonna be dope. So we can't wait to bring that to you guys. So of course, if you are watching us, listening to us now, take the time to stop and subscribe. If you're not already subscribed, take a moment to do that now. You're gonna like us anyway. You're gonna like this video, so just go ahead and like it now, okay? Drop us a comment, holler at us, reach out to us. Don't forget to hashtag Ask These Nuts, okay? Because we want to hear from you guys. So
we do.
Don't forget.
And again, like we said, some of the most amazing topics that we've had, one of the best guests that we've had have been as a result of your feedback.
Absolutely.
So like you guys are single-handedly creating and evolving Podcast These Nuts.
Yeah.
So
make sure you holler at us. Guys, so we want to touch on episode 26 real quick. Our last episode was is he lame or not? Guys,
I think it's easy. No. Here's how it works, right? Okay. Stop sticking your dick in random pussy. Simple, done. And then start.
But resolve from a woman's perspective.
And you must enjoy the pussy that you have. Okay? Yeah. Now, does this desire to want to explore have anything to do with your sexual relationship with the person that you're with? Meaning, does it stem from, because we've heard this in women where they'll say things like, oh, I don't do nothing during sex, I just lay there. Does it stem from those sorts of situations where you don't have the ability to maybe tell your girl, hey, dress up and are we gonna do this tonight, or we watch a porn and be like, yo, we gonna do that? Sorry, I had something in my nose.
No, it's okay. No, it has nothing to do with that.
Oh, okay.
It's more, it can be
we had a really great and entertaining guest on our show. His name is, what's his name again?
I don't remember.
Lies. He's already. No, we joking. That's Wade.
No, his name is Wade.
His name is Wade from I Talk Great podcast, and
Henu. I think is his brand.
Henu t-shirt line. Really, really great show. So if you guys didn't get to watch it, make sure you go back and watch it and check it out. You'll learn a lot of great things about balance, discipline, and what some people consider lame
when it comes to guys.
Yeah, they invited us on their show, I Talk Great podcast.
I'm a dumb nigga. My vibration is low. I don't know shit because I don't know shit.
If you come into contact,
with
a person,
want to tell me I don't know shit.
Based upon
clearly there's some shit.
No, you bringing up shit.
You brought it up.
I brought up about the dating shit. I brought up about the dating shit, bro.
I say the Florida FC.
That's all. You doing some next shit. I didn't do no whole shit. How I do whole shit? How I do whole shit?
Let's go back to the topic.
You may never see it. It was episode 12 of their show. It got real in there. Shit got real. It was fun. It was entertaining and scary.
It was. A lot of things were exposed. You'll never see it. Sorry.
Possibly. Well, we're hoping that Jodie, the skillful editor that she
that's
will
right.
be able to salvage, because that's
there was some really good times.
There were some really great points. So when they said that they weren't going to be, I said, wait a minute, Jodie, reach out, talk to them, have them send it over to you, and see what you can do with it. Whip it up and put your fine tuning on it, as you do here at TV Takeover Studios. So just like I Talk Great podcast, some help with editing your videos, holla at my girl.
I got you.
Because it's easy to record and film, but editing, it takes a whole
nother ballgame.
It takes a whole lot, especially to piecemeal and put things together. Especially if you had like a whole long show that was full of a lot of foolishness like that last show was. You need a professional to come in there
and clean it up.
And Jodie at TV Takeover Studios is a pro at that. So holla at your girl for editing experience if you need some help with that. So
but thanks definitely to the cast of I Talk Great, podcast. Yeah, it did get crazy, but we appreciated the invite, and we also know that sometimes we tend to spice things up.
We come to realize that maybe it's us. Maybe we instigate a little bit, just a a little, and guys, we're sorry. Not really, but we had fun with it.
We did.
So hopefully you guys will be able to see episode 12 of I Talk Gray, assuming that Jodie can.
I might be able to get 15 to 20 minutes.
It's at least 15 minutes of good content in there. So we will see. We will see. So yeah, episode 12. 12. 27. Sorry, guys, I'm stuck on I Talk Gray. So episode 27, right? The title is Chainless Change.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
With a phenomenal guest, Marq, Director of Outreach.
Yes.
And he's here to talk to us about. I guess I can't say criminal justice because, as he said, there is no justice in the criminal system. He's here to talk to us about that. Recidivism, and what his organization is doing. So how can we impact recidivism and criminal justice reform? So that's the question tonight. Yeah. How do we impact that? So
just to kind of start it out a little bit. So, and I don't know if you know this or not, but on one of the talk shows that I had on My Life War Real All the Way Live, we had a guest on the show. His name is,
he's still here.
Stacii Lewis. And Stacii Lewis had actually reached out to us after being in prison for 21 years. For a series of extremely violent crimes. By the way, guys, that is on episode 4, so you can go to the YouTube for the TV Takeover Studios and you can see that episode. But when we had he had actually only been out for about, I think, 5 months at the time. So it was really interesting to hear because he was very open about some of the things that you kind of talked about. So I really am curious to kind of hear, your perspective on things, and I'm definitely excited to share with him as well, kind of what some of the things that you guys are doing, maybe even connect what you're doing, your organization is doing, and maybe even, possibly connecting you too. Yeah. Now, when I think about Stacii Lewis and his, I kind of want to start at the beginning, right? Because you didn't just kind of start this from being a good old citizen and you just decided that this is something that you wanted to do. You got into some shit. And, as Stacii Lewis, there were a lot of circumstances and situations with his upbringing and his childhood that unfortunately had him be in situations where he felt that these were his only options. So talk to us a little bit about how it started for you.
Well, long story short, my parents were incarcerated when I was growing up.
Oh, wow.
And so,
both of them?
Well, my mom was. My dad was in and out. When he was out, he wasn't really around. So, in fact, I actually didn't really realize who my mom was. I grew up calling my grandmother my mom. Okay. And it wasn't until I was about 7 or 8 that I actually remember meeting my mom. And at that point, I remember going through a transition where my grandmother was training me not to call her mom anymore. And so she'd spank me and stuff to and teach me that I'm your grandmother, not your mother. Right. But just about everyone that I know in my community has someone who has in their family or in their friend circle who has been incarcerated or has an arrest record. In fact, of course, 1 in 3 black guys or 1 in 3 black men are arrested at some point in their life, and so the likelihood of having an encounter with someone who has been involved in the criminal system is pretty high in our communities. And so for me, I actually I grew up in I got into foster care, and once I went into the foster care system.
How old were you when you started foster care?
I was 11.
Okay.
When I went into foster care.
And how old were you when your parents first were incarcerated?
As far as I can remember, and my mom was always in and out of jail. Oh, wow. I know that she was kind of in prison when I was an infant.
Really?
Yeah, and so I really didn't meet her until.
Do you mind sharing what the situation or the circumstances were behind that?
It was a number of different things. She was on drugs. There was there were violent crimes. A lot of different things. But I think that what happened with her is kind of what happens with a lot of people. They'll kind of get involved in the system, and the course of their lives, the system kind of just sucks them in and strips them of opportunities and their dreams, and make them believe that they're really a criminal, and so they live that, and it changes the trajectory of your life once you are identified as those labels and have an encounter with a system that's designed to oppress you. And so I think that what happened to her is no different from what happened to a lot of other people. And early on, it started with me as well. I was in foster care. From foster care, of course, they didn't really know how to deal with me. And being an older child that went into foster care, it was hard to place me into homes because everyone wants babies and little children.
So you said that you're with your grandmother, though. At what point did you go from your grandmother to foster care?
So I was with my grandmother, and my grandmother, of course, was older, and she dealt with some kidney issues. She was on dialysis and stuff like that. And so I was like around 11 years old. I remember going to school and reporting that my mom had molested me. And so
was that true?
Yes, that was true. And so once I reported that, we were like they automatically kind of took me out and started to pay some attention to our home, and they placed me back there. Well, a couple of months later, my mom gave me a sweater for Christmas, and being angry about how she had always treated us and treated me in particular, and those experiences I had, I set that sweater on fire on the side of the house.
Wow.
And it was like in a metal tin. It didn't burn anything. It just kind of got some attention from people passing by, and they called the police. And at that point, I was permanently taken out of the home, and I was into foster care. I entered into foster care, and so.
Did anybody else know that your mother was sexually molesting you?
Well, okay, it's a really unique situation, but yes, people know. People knew. My great grandmother was there when it happened, and my mom never really identified it as like sexual abuse or molestation. She just identified it as not knowing how to discipline me. And so that instance, that was what she did. And so she's never really admitted, like she's never denied it happening. She just always has said that that wasn't rape and it wasn't molestation. I just didn't know how to discipline you.
Wow. And where's your mother today?
She's somewhere in Florida.
Okay. Okay. Do you guys have a relationship?
You know, I tried to have a relationship with her for a while, and I kind of got to a place where I realized that would never really be a healthy relationship for me, and I completely let that go. And you know, and I kind of always had reminders that, you know, she never really wanted the men or the boys. My sister's the oldest, and she would remind us, you know, that once she was around, and the only child she ever wanted was my sister, because that was the child from her marriage. So it kind of created some issues with our family unit from the start. And she would, you know, kind of remind us that she didn't want us around. My sister was the only child that she really had any desire to have in her life. And so there were tension between the siblings. And then, you know, as I kind of grew older and I got involved in the foster care system, and she kind of went in and out of jail, she started to blame me for reporting my experience. Yeah.
So now here we are. You've been taken out of the home. You're in foster care, 11 years old. What's going on?
So at 11 years old, I go into foster care for setting that thing on fire. And I think, you know, I kind of bounced around in there. I had a bunch of mental health diagnoses, like ADHD and bipolar and all of that other stuff during that time. And so I actually went into a group home because it was difficult to keep me in a foster home.
Why?
Because I would fight there. I didn't want to be there. I would run away. I was very outspoken, and they would put me with like these older white families and stuff like that. It wasn't even like anything that I had a connection to. I remember being with like one good family, and I probably went through like 6 over the course of a year. Like it didn't last long at all. Yeah. And so they eventually put me into a group home, and the group home was like a lockdown facility. And so we would go to school even there. It was for intensive behavior children. And so while I was there, I would get into fights and stuff like that. And they put me from there. I got like an arrest record for battery and different things that I would do when I was lashing out inside of that group home, and they transferred me from there directly into the juvenile justice system.
Did you ever really get help with some of the mental issues that you were having? Because it sounded like that was, you know, the catalyst to some of the problems that you were having behaviorally.
It's funny that you said that, because I had that conversation earlier today. There was never any emphasis on getting help or any priority on getting help.
So it was diagnosis,
be medicine, but I would just kind of be a zombie and feel abnormal. And my response to that was to cheat the medicine or refuse to take it, which in turn made me non-compliant, which resulted in more disciplinary actions. And I think that, that in itself was problematic because I never had an advocate to address any of those things that were happening to me along the way. And then secondly, what will happen a lot of times with mental health professionals, even if you aren't or even if you think that what you're taking isn't in your best interest, they'll still try to force that on you because all of the years of experience and education that they have, they feel like they know what's best for you. And so a lot of times there are decisions made about your wellness and your well-being that aren't even including you in the process. And that's exactly what happened to me growing up.
I think what happens a lot of times too is these pharmaceutical companies, they actually become sponsors for these facilities. And not only these facilities, but of course the doctors within these facilities. So it becomes a business to see who can subscribe the most, and based on that, that's how much sponsorship and support.
It is a business.
It is a business.
Sponsorship that you can. So that unfortunately is what happens.
And we were having a discussion with a friend of ours who happens to be, is she a psychiatrist or a psychologist? And she was talking about a lot of these clinics or these like chain type clinics who they aren't as responsible as they should be with people's mental health and mental wellness, and they're just kind of, like you talked about, prescribing, but not really taking the time to really analyze the individual. They're kind of broad stroking people and, painting them all with one brush. And obviously people will present, maybe present symptoms in a similar way that which may be close, but each individual is different, and what's going to work out for each individual is really on an individual basis. So,
and it's not to say that some, medication does not work, right? Just with a recent experience, something that I noticed is that it's important, I think, if you do put someone on medication, to also couple it with therapy. To walk them through exactly what this medication can do. Like, one of the side effects that I found out recently is that there are some depression medication that while it's trying to run its course through your system, you're going to actually have lows before you have highs. And for some people, if you're not educated on that, it can frustrate you or make you feel worse or make you act out or, do things that you're not normally would not do. So I think, again, not to down people that are on medication, because for some people it does work, but
it's not necessarily about the people who are on medication, but it's about, like you talked about, the education around it, and also sitting down and having conversations with your patients about, because when we had a former guest, Momo Willie, she talked about her experience with mental health, and she also talked about being prescribed multiple drugs, multiple medications, and things just weren't working for her, but the doctors just really couldn't get a hold and handle on it because it just felt like they were just saying, okay, well, take this, try this, and wasn't really listening to what she was talking about. So it's not the medication, because of course it can help, and it's helped a lot of people, but the education and also the therapy, talk therapy that should come along with it. And, unfortunately, a lot of people don't get the true help that they need. And it kind of sounds like that was a part of your story.
So now here you are, you got in trouble. And because you got in trouble, you were then transferred to a juvenile facility, right? Is that where it kind of started for you?
That is kind of where it started. Well, it started well beyond that, actually, because when I was younger, I would still kind of get in trouble in school, and they'd arrest me or something, like the community resource officers and stuff, and I'd go into the detention center and come home, and the same thing, whether it was a fight or something like that, instead of disciplining me as a child, they'd arrest me, and it would be, a couple of days in a detention center, or sometimes 21 days, or coming out, going to, and eventually being on I think it was like probation or something, at some kind of community program or anger management.
Is that kind of where it started for you? You getting in trouble? When did you start finding yourself getting in the system outside of just?
I think that I started finding myself getting in the system earlier in school, like it happens with a lot of people. Even, children are minority children. Some things that are normal for other groups are often criminalized. If you get in a fight or you have a temper tantrum, did you see the little 6-year-old girl that just happened?
It's ridiculous.
And it's younger and younger at this point, but a lot of people are criminalized early on for things that are normal. So it started with me probably in like 4th grade or something, where I was getting arrested for fighting or other things at school, and it kind of just like transitioned. And once I was inside of that foster home and the group home, then it became like a real thing for me, where it was more intense at that point, and I was actually locked down and held into facilities and stuff at that point. So I'd say around 12 years old, when I started to transition to those commitment programs and things like that, is when it became a bit more serious.
Your first big arrest?
My first arrest was at arson. Big arrest was the arson.
The arson.
Yeah, I think before that it was battery at school.
Okay, and what was the longest stint that you were?
4.5 years. I actually remained incarcerated from the time that I was like 12 until I was 17.
Really?
Yeah, so the whole time that I was going through my developmental phase and puberty and all that stuff, I was incarcerated.
That was happening.
In fact, I was supposed to be transferred from that facility on my 18th birthday to go to a YO camp until I was 21, and I figured out a way to get out of that situation.
How did you do that?
Well, a couple of things happened. I escaped from that facility.
Wait. Legally or illegally?
Oh, illegally.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I graduated while I was in there. I went to school like year round, and because that's kind of how it worked. I went to school year round. When I was 15, I graduated while I was in there. And I'd gotten, additional cases and stuff while I was in the institution with fighting, inciting riots and different things like that while being inside of there. So at this point, they started to charge me as an adult for those offenses while I was a juvenile. And I started to build an adult record. And it had gotten to the point where from inside of that facility, they decided that they were going to commit me to a youthful offender prison. And I didn't have an advocate from the outside helping me. And so there were a lot of people who were in those situations who would have had a different level of mercy and different types of outcomes. But for me, it was different because I didn't have an advocate. I was a ward of the state, and for the state, it was easier to keep me incarcerated inside of that facility because they no longer had jurisdiction. They didn't have to worry about placing me inside of a foster home. They didn't have to worry about cutting anybody a check to keep me.
Because by this time, you're going to be aging out of anyway.
So the plan was for me to age out inside of those institutions. And no one just cared. I mean, I was a young black boy whose parents was on drugs, and I didn't have anyone else. Who cared? My grandmother died while I was inside of those facilities. And so she was like in the process of trying to get custody of me again so that I could have someone or have a place to go. And my grandmother died while I was in there.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's horrific.
So how old are we now? Where are we now in the story?
So I was about like 16. So when I was 16, I got in a fight with an officer in there, and they pressed charges, charged me as an adult. And from there, I was supposed to go to a YO camp. And I decided that I wasn't going to go through that. I was writing motions. I had figured out how to write motions because I had a free time inside of there because I graduated. And like one of the things they had me doing was writing weekly devotionals for the facility and writing like a newsletter for the facility and stuff to keep me occupied so that I wasn't a distraction in the classroom. You can only do that same coursework, so many times. And so I figured out during that process how to write motions, but I also didn't know that the books and the material that we had at that time was outdated. So it really wasn't making its way through the system. No one was responding to me. The case managers who were supposed to be like my guardians and stuff didn't really care. And so I was about to be shuffled from a juvenile facility to an adult facility until I was 21. And I knew that there were so many other people who would have had a different outcome if they had an advocate. And I wanted to get in front of the judge. So in order for me to get in front of the judge, I escaped from that facility.
Wow.
And that's what happened when I escaped from the facility. It got the attention of a guardian ad litem who was actually like, hold on, why have you been there so long? You graduated. And started to explore things a little bit differently. The leadership at that facility had turned over. It was no longer that guy. It was a younger black guy who was now in charge. And they kind of collaborated together and got me out of there, out of the county jail that I was in for escape. And I stayed there, I think, like about 9 years. I'm sorry, about 9 months.
I stayed there
for.
Wait a minute.
How old are you?
Right? carrying 4.
Take the shoes off. No, I stayed there for like 9 months, and then then they brought me back to that facility and worked out a transition plan so that I can leave and go back into go home. Even though I didn't know what home was.
Okay, that was going to be my new question. My next question, like what
now
did
here
you
we
do
are.
when you leave? What did you do?
Here we are. How old are you now? At this point?
Well, at that point, I was 17, and in order to prevent from being homeless, I enrolled into college, and so I went to school from there. I think that I stayed inside of a kind of an adult transition facility for about 2 weeks. So I was 17 in a transition facility with people who had aged out of foster care already while I was preparing to go to college. And I went to college, but I wasn't really equipped with any skills. I went in at like 12 years old. Technology had changed. I didn't know anything about just life in general. I didn't know any social skills, which I was telling you all earlier. I didn't know anything about applying for jobs or nothing. How was I supposed to live independently?
There weren't. What was counseling like? There wasn't. It's just like kind of sit these children here. They'll figure it out. They'll get through the system, but no real development.
Yes and no. For a lot of people, again, who had support, they had advocates who would ensure that they were connected to resources. And now I know that there were a lot of resources that were available if I was informed about them and if I had someone who ensured that I was actually connected to them.
Whose responsibility is it to do that?
It would have been the case managers, and I would have gone through like an independent living program and stuff like that. But I actually emancipated myself from inside that institution so that I could get out. Because a part of being able to be released at that age was I had to have a home to go to. And since I didn't, we went through the process of emancipating me while I was inside of there. So I left independently, whereas other people would have had some kind of support.
Got it. So you're 17. You enrolled in college.
I enrolled in college.
Where did you go?
Should I talk about this? I went to Florida Memorial.
Okay. And you were there for?
Oh, not long at all.
Okay.
I went to the school for a while, and because I didn't have any kind of support or really understand anything about re-entering into the community, I went there and started to kind of relive all the things that I heard people talk about, like selling drugs and stuff like that. I started doing it at school, and I got kicked out.
Oh. Okay.
So I got kicked out of school.
So what led you to Chainless Change?
Yeah,
I mean,
so
you
now
definitely had a lot going on in your life, right?
Yeah, so a lot of I think it's important to have the backstory, right? Because, again, when we talk about, I'm not quite sure if you said it on air or not, but you said that public speaking and all of those things that you mentioned was foreign to you because of the fact that you were institutionalized at such a young age. You had no social skills. But because of your passion, as a result of your passion, you became confident enough to create this organization. So now let's get to that. Let's get to the Chainless Change and tell us what the organization is about and why you're here.
Well, the organization is about providing support for people who are who have arrest records and who are transitioning from institutions or who's indirectly impacted by the criminal justice system or the criminal system. Because like my experience, there are many people who are released from those spaces and really aren't prepared for society and aren't prepared for success. And what happens is people are incarcerated and they'll go in sometimes, like me, with mental health issues. They'll go in with a lot of deficiencies and deficits that aren't addressed while they're inside of those institutions, but they're expected to come out a completely different person and able to smoothly transition back into society as if nothing happened. And for a lot of people, that's not a reality. And that's the reason that I created Chainless Change, because I understood what the challenges were for me. And I knew that a lot of people around me also had similar challenges. And I wanted to be able to provide some kind of assistance and be a resource for them. And I thought about it for a while. I actually came up with the name and everything when I was probably like 15 or 16 years old inside of that institution. But what happened was I was kind of scared to do this type of work. I was scared to speak publicly about my past. I knew that people would start to kind of look me up and different things like that. and I just didn't want to kind of live with that. I got a job and I got comfortable, but then when Amendment 4 started to become a really big deal, I was out getting petitions signed and having conversations at my job about my background. At that point, I was like the operations manager for the company, and they pulled me aside and was like, hey, you can't have those conversations here. In fact, we didn't know about your background, so we can let you go. And so that's kind of what happened. And I decided that when that happened, that it would never happen to me again, because I would create an organization that provided opportunities for people who had similar stories as myself.
And through all of what you've been through, being in and out of jail, prison, you've racked up a lot of fines, right? A lot of fines, a lot of court fees. So that kind of put you in a situation where your license was suspended at one point, right? So what does Chainless Change do to help people who are facing those situations? Because I read some of the articles that you were featured in, and of course there is in the state of Florida, that thing where the clerks, the county clerks, they're funded by these fees and fines, right? And then when they're unpaid, what happens is licenses get suspended. This could impact your ability to work, things of that nature. Right. So talk a little bit about that and what you guys are doing to help people.
So Florida's court system is a cash generating system, and it relies heavily on fines and fees to fund itself. And so what happens is people who are arrested, whether they're found guilty or not, they'll accumulate a lot of fees in the process of having any kind of encounter with the court system, because once you have any kind of contact, they want to be sure that they generate some kind of income off of you. And if you don't pay those fines, then they are often turned over to a collections agency where it accrues interest, and it results in your driver's license being suspended, as well as a number of other things happening. If you have fees, you can't get occupational licensing in Florida. And that's one of the things that happened to me. And it happened to me with some charges from when I was like 15 or 16. I wasn't even old enough to have a job, old enough to be considered independent, to be responsible for these fines, but the system didn't care. And so that's actually how I started the organization. It wasn't an organization at first. I fixed my own driver's licenses because I went for like 3 or 4 years without knowing what to do. And then I realized that I could convert those things into into a community service hours and have a wave. And I started to do that for myself. And I knew a bunch of people who had similar issues. And I started to do the same thing for them. And they would refer other people for me to help. And it kind of became a thing. And so that's kind of how the organization started, by just helping people, if they could, repair their lives, like basic things. If you don't have a driver's license in Florida, what can you do? You can't get a job.
Because public transportation is not the best. It's, nowhere like, cities like New York, or, for example, and it's really, really hard to get around. So if you don't have a driver's license, how do you get to and from work? How do you even get to pay these fines if you can't get a job because your driver's license is suspended?
As a matter of fact, a lot of job applications will actually you have a reliable source of transportation.
And if they don't ask you, they'll run a third-party check when they do the background check, and they put your driver's license information there to see whether or not you have a driver's license. So it's something that impacts you on every level. And for about 3 years, I didn't have a driver's license, but I was still trying to work 2 jobs, trying to pay it off.
And trying to go to school.
And trying to go to school. So I would get up like 5 o'clock in the morning in order to be to work by 8. And and it was because I catch the bus. I still end up late and be disciplined because about something I didn't have control over. I try to take a course in between that and then go to a night job where I was bartending or serving. And I did that for a while, and I could never get anywhere with paying off those fines and stuff. It was really difficult. I think I owed about $5,000 or $6,000 at that point.
And they don't offer payment plans if you go to them and say and acknowledge the fact that this is something.
It depends on the county, right?
It depends completely on the county. They may or may not offer payment plans, but them offering a payment plan doesn't get you driving. You still have to pay that stuff. And then figure out your license stuff later. And it's just another instance where you're criminalized for being poor, for not being able to afford those types of financial obligations. And for people who have a criminal record, more likely than not, they're going to be working a job with a low paying wage because it's hard to find a job with a fair, livable paying wage in Florida in general, especially for someone who has a criminal background. And then if you look at the cost of living in Florida compared to the wages, there's always going to be a deficit. And so
it's just like this never ending cycle. You know, which is why people end up finding themselves back in prison because they feel like it can be very difficult.
It is.
While it could be doable, but very difficult and challenging to try to live and work through, you know, those extremes and things that, you know, you kind of have to go through, like taking public transportation, getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning just to get to work at 8 a.m. or you may even end up being late, then to go to a night job and try to educate yourself and go to school. Like there's so many things going on. So it takes a lot of perseverance to work through those things, but not everybody is strong enough to do it. So unfortunately, they end up back in prison. So talk to us about recidivism, what that means, and you know what type of work you guys are doing around that.
So recidivism is
let's tell the people what that actually means. There might be some people out there that don't even know what that
so that's what I'm saying. What does it mean?
What is it?
So recidivism is the rate at which people are rearrested or when they have another offense with another encounter with the criminal system.
Do you by any chance know what that rate is right now, or
right now? Well, it varies for people who have an arrest before the age of 21 and are released on the before they're 21. The recidivism rate is about 44%. For them. For people between like the ages of 30, I believe it's 67.
Wow.
Right. Yeah. And so like 2/3 of people who are incarcerated return back to institutions, and it's because there are a lot of factors that contribute to people not being able to successfully re-enter into the community. One of the things we just talked about,
the fees and
fines. And then you have cost of supervision that's compound in addition to fees and fines.
So you have to pay for that?
Yeah, you have to pay to be on probation.
Really?
Yes.
You have to pay for that?
What? Yeah, you have to pay for that.
I didn't know that.
That is a really lucrative system. In fact, a lot of states have started to privatize that.
You should be probation officers.
I don't want to be in
California is a big deal. Like if you have a private probation office or a monitoring system, you make tons of money.
Wow.
Right.
I was not aware of that.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Yeah. A lot of places have, just like they privatize prisons.
Because it's like I get the point of suspending the license because it's how do we get you to pay these fees? So if you pay, it's kind of like I guess it's like a punishment on top of a punishment.
Oppression.
You know, how do you? So has there been discussion on other ways of impact? So I know that there was a senator sometime who was trying to look into ways of changing legislation around suspension of driver's license because of how punitive it can be. It can be very punitive. It's like, I get it, but I don't get it, but I get it. You know what I mean? In terms of why they want to do it, but isn't there like a better way to kind of get people to take care of the fees, especially because it's non-traffic related violations? So,
well, I think a couple of things. One, why are there fees related to the arrest if it's only to generate funds to pay for the court system?
Yeah, why are there fees?
We shouldn't be paying for the court system, so that's problematic in itself. Having a system or a justice system that is funded on the backs of people and on penalizing people really means that you're going to always have profit first because you have to meet the budget.
Right, so isn't that a way to kind of stop, look, don't commit a crime, because you commit a crime, you're going to pay on top of pay on top of pay, right? And then if you can't pay, then your driver's license, is that a crime, a quote-unquote crime prevention in a way?
It's not an effect of crime prevention.
It's not, and I personally think that it's, and we talked about this last night, I think it's conflict of interest when you have the fund for the state being funded through these fines. So they're not encouraged to want to do anything to better the situation because it financially benefits them.
So the clerks, the clerks, they need this funding, right? So that's how they get it through the fees and fines. They talked about it at one point of trying to do this sort of general funding type situation to fund them. That didn't work out. So it's just like, it's cluster, I don't want to curse, but it's just a big clusterfuck of foolishness, you know, and it's just
the system is set up to system is set up for you to fail.
Well, the system is set up to fail, but it is magnified if you are someone who is of a low income or poor. And so there are a lot of things that are criminalized in addition to not being able to just afford things that are associated with being poor or minority, like things like loitering. That's stuff that you'll see more so in minority communities as opposed to other parts of the town. And that's something that, you know, you'll get arrested for and you'll find yourself responsible for fines and obligations. We have the same conversation about like driving with suspended license. You come up with a bunch of fines and stuff for driving with suspended license or not having insurance, but those are things in itself that are crimes of poverty. Like if you can't afford to pay insurance, how can you afford to pay the fines associated with the tickets and all of that other stuff? And if you can't have driver's license, how are you going to even get that to be able to pay for it? So poverty is criminalized more often than anything, and a lot of those are innocuous crimes that don't have any
real impact on the community,
on people, on the community at all. It's just to generate some kind of income for the court system.
Wow. So outside of, you know, trying to find ways to help people who, you know, face these situations where you know, they needed assistance with fines and things of that nature, and flipping and turning it into you mentioned community service. What are some other things that you guys are doing to help break down some of the barriers that people face around recidivism, working, getting employed? Because I know there's a number of employers who will hire because we, like when Stacii Lewis, when he was out, I remember Jodie was talking about trying to help him get connected to employers who are willing to hire someone with criminal convictions. How does your organization aid?
Well, it's a number of different things. Like I said, the driver's license and that stuff is something that we started off doing. And I started to volunteer with other organizations while we were doing the driver's license stuff, and realized that the primary response to reentry is often get a job and find employment. But there are a lot of other things surrounding that employment that will have an impact and that need to be resolved before you can really find and maintain a job. For example, people need clothing to be able to get to interviews and then to be able to show up to work every day. You need transportation to get to the interview and to get to the job. You need somewhere to stay. So that you can even think about. You know, and so those are those survival things that people aren't really considering.
Or just basic social skills, understanding, you know, when you go into an interview, you know, how to conduct yourself, you know, what things to say and what things not to say. I think that's probably just as important as getting there. Because it's all fine and dandy, you can get there. So you know, get your ride, you can walk, you can ride a bicycle, but once you get there, are you prepared mentally to be able to handle what comes with an interview process? That's one of the things that I have always thought of myself in getting into or getting involved with when it comes to, you know, women. Especially women that have children at a very young age and are not able to get educated, just teaching them how to be ladies, how to be able to conduct themselves in the interview process, how to write a resume, you know, basic things that a lot of times we take for granted. You know, and I think that, I'm not quite sure if that's something that your organization does, but I would absolutely encourage that to be a part of it as well, is teaching them how to be able to integrate back into society, you know, be able to have conversations. I think there's a high level of aggression as well when you are someone that has been institutionalized for so long, because that's what you're taught. You're taught that somebody messes with you, you have to take them down, or you have to prove of yourself in an aggressive manner, or you be considered a punk and targeted. And that's well, in corporate America, sometimes it does feel like that, but there are definitely better ways on handling that. So it's a lot. I think a lot of things like that too that is being missed. Is that something your organization does or thought about doing? Or?
Well, it's something that we're already doing because what'll happen is people will go in and there's large gaps on their resume and they have to figure out how to explain that, how to talk about it. You have to remind people, and it's surprising sometimes. Don't smoke a cigarette before you go to this interview, and how to have a conversation, not to lead with, hey, I just got out of prison. I have felonies, not to really lead with that stuff. It's a lot of just things that you would think that are basic that are needed when working with someone who's re-entering into the community. And so we assist with not just, helping them find the basic necessities to go there, but being prepared for those opportunities when they become available. But also another thing that we do is we seek out employers who are able or willing to offer livable wages to people who are returning citizens, because that's really important. If you're working for minimum wage or something here in Florida, you can work all month long and still have a deficit at the end of the month, because an average one-bedroom apartment is like $1,250 in
and the lists are long for housing.
And with housing, it's really unique for people who are justice involved, because they are not allowed to live in affordable housing apartments because they have a felony. You have to in the background. I saw your face. You have a felony. You can't live there. You can't get on HUD. You can't go through an HOA.
You can't even live in the hood?
Yeah, you can't go on HUD. You can't get into places that are subsidized housing. So affordable.
So they can't even get into that.
So and so you'll find people sleeping on relatives' couch if they have some kind of support.
That's difficult. That is difficult.
That's hard.
It is hard.
That's sad.
Yeah,
that's sad.
There was recently a story in Palm Beach County, like during the hurricane, where a guy was kind of on the streets and he had been put out because he went to stay with his family, and the landlord found out that he had a felony and put them all out. And that's not an unusual occurrence at all. People who have criminal records aren't allowed to live in places where there's private HOAs and stuff. You're at the mercy of the landlords and having to find properties who are willing to give you the opportunity to just live. And it's stuff like that makes it really difficult, and stuff like that poses a threat to public safety.
There's a lot of barriers.
I don't know where I'm going to sleep at night. What do I do?
What do I do? And I just I feel for you and everything that you went, like your story, how you came up. And even when we listened to when she had this show with Stacii Lewis, again, another heartbreaking story. You can just imagine how many people had to deal with so many trials and tribulations growing up, mental health issues, not getting things properly addressed, that led to this life, and now trying to re-enter society and and be a good citizen, and it can be very difficult. But then you have those, I just have to say, look, don't do the crime if you can't do the goddamn crime, okay? Because some people out there are just shady as shit and just are criminals to be criminals because it's just easier to be a criminal. Some probably grew up in middle class, but now they want to act like they're a G, and they kind of go through those things. So I mean, I don't necessarily feel sorry for those people. There are instances where people they're going to be that person. But more likely than not, there are issues and things that could have contributed to someone becoming that person. And it's just hard to recover. It's hard all the way. It's just like it's hard all the way around, because you have those, as Jamaicans would say, you have them bad mind people out there. You have those bad mind people out there who are just who they are. But then you have people like yourself, people like Stacii, and countless others who just had, just weren't dealt, the right cards, didn't have the best parents. And unfortunately, you can't choose, who your parents are going to be. And you just hope that you end up in the right situation. But, unfortunately, these things happen. So then how is that balance created? So it's great to have organizations like yourself who can come together, and really help and support the community and help those who who really need it.
Yeah. And I think what makes it even more special is the fact that you've experienced it yourself. So people can relate to you and you can relate to them.
Right.
Because a lot of times people don't go join something or be a part of something or seek help because they feel like they're not going to be understood, which is why a lot of people don't go to therapists, because they don't feel like their therapist can be culturally competent enough to be able to really help them in dealing what it is that they're dealing with. So kudos to you and your organization, what it is that you're doing.
I do want to ask you a question just real quickly on Meek Mill. What did you feel about his, I just had to ask, what did you feel about his situation and the whole criminal justice reform and his fight and, you know, that whole thing? Like, do you have an opinion on that?
I do have an opinion, but I think that what happened to Meek Mills isn't unique from what happens to hundreds of thousands of young Black Americans across this country. The only difference with Meek Mill is that he had the support of a lot of high-profile people who were willing to be advocates in different ways that other people aren't. But Meek Mill, I think his encounter started when he was like 18, 19 years old, and went on for like a decade. And that's something that happens to a lot of people. So you'll see guys under the tree, and you'll see guys standing on the corner and think, hey, they had a bright future. What happened to them? But what really happens is that they become arrested, have an encounter with a system that was designed to oppress them and strip them of their hope, strip them of opportunities and things like that along the way. And then they become that person. And I think that's what started to, that's the same system that Meek Mills had an encounter with, but his outcome was different because he had access that a lot of people don't. And so that's what makes his situation unique.
And do you think that realistically, you know, his fight, even as high as that he sits, do you think his fight will trickle down to people lower level who really do need help?
I hope so.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can say that I hope so. I think that, you know, him having his experience means that he should be reaching back to those who don't have a voice, whose stories are never heard in the same way that his was, who doesn't have the attention of the mainstream media, and then make a difference in their lives and be advocates and provide support for them. So I think that it can have a huge impact
depending on how he handles it.
If he uses that platform and his experiences for the greater good of the community.
And give back to organizations such as yourself.
I'd appreciate
Meek Mill, make a donation to Chainless Change out here, you know, doing things, you know, and helping out our brothers and sisters here in the state of Florida. You know, funding always helps.
That's how you give back, sir. You seek out organizations such as this and see what you can do to give them the financial backing, or even just the exposure, you know, so that people can be aware of what's going on, what's trying to be done, and how they can seek help and make a change. Because you're right, if he wasn't Meek Mill, he would not have the outcome that he had. That's just the reality of it.
And so it happened for 10 years, but it would have been another 10 or 20 years that he continued to be stripped and continue to be oppressed, and then there's nothing left besides a broken man with a bunch of shattered dreams and little hope and promise. And I think that, you know, organizations like you mentioned that are smaller like mine and that are focused on providing resources to people who are involved in the criminal justice system pose a really unique challenge in regards to charities in general, because we can't be funded if we are willing to hire people who have criminal records. Government funding that we can receive. In fact, I didn't know that until I had an experience where we received a grant. We won a grant. We were awarded one. And then when going through the process, we discovered that no one could work under that grant who could not pass a level 2 background check. So for us to have an impact and help the people by hiring them and have real sustainable change, that meant that we wouldn't have been able to accept that money. So we didn't. And
that's frustrating.
It is.
So private funding is.
It has to be private community funding. There are, you know, foundations and things like that. But those organizations or those entities that provide, you know, funding in really large amounts that help you propel those programs, you're not able to if you have people working under those programs that have criminal backgrounds.
So I know that you've had, September 19th you had an outreach event.
Yeah, we
but you have more, I'm sure, coming up. What do you have coming up? What's going on?
So we're doing a couple of things actually. Right now we're just doing clothing drives, constant clothing drives.
Okay.
There's people who come out of jail who just need clothes.
Okay.
They need hygiene. Like you'd be surprised how much there's a need for basic deodorant, toothbrushes, socks and things like. So we're doing clothing drives constantly.
How can people donate
clothing,
toiletries?
We have an Amazon wish list where they can just order on Amazon and it'll be shipped directly to us.
Okay.
They just look up Chainless Change
on Amazon. Okay.
Right, on Amazon.
Awesome.
In addition to that, they can go onto our website.
Okay.
They can make a donation. They can purchase a shirt like this. This one says
Fellowship with
I fellowship with felons.
Okay, now I didn't even know, and this is my favorite color too. I think you know what, Wendy, I want a shirt.
Ordered.
Yes.
Done.
Awesome.
So what is your website?
It's www.chainlesschange.org.
That is really nice.
That is
and
dope.
so we have a few different shirts. And with every shirt we use the proceeds to buy like a white blouse or button-down shirt for someone who wants to go on an interview.
Okay, now let me ask you, are you guys open to secondhand donations as
Absolutely.
well? Okay.
People need everything that they can. Our goal is to try to provide a bag of regular clothing to everyone who reaches out as they leave institutions, and also as we do the job prep and prepare people for jobs to have a professional attire to give to them as well.
Okay. Let's say there is a professional educator that wanted to volunteer their time to, let's say, do a seminar on doing interviews or how to write resume or how to use a computer. Do you have opportunities for those individuals as well?
Yes, tons of opportunities for those individuals. In fact, because we're a smaller organization and it's hard to get funding, we really appreciate volunteers who are willing to volunteer their time in those ways, because it'll free us up to be able to do other things.
Right.
But we're on the ground providing services, managing the administrative part, all of that stuff at the same time. And so we have more volunteers who are willing to donate their time, even if it's a couple of hours a day, or helping plan an event so that we can kind of do things or provide more resources. All of that stuff's appreciated. And people who write, who do grant writing and different things like that. Just any kind of assistance that you can imagine that a nonprofit would need.
Absolutely.
We need it. Yeah, we have these shirts. If somebody knows how to market them, please.
Hello. Okay. I mean, because it's actually a really nice shirt.
It is. It really is.
It's actually, when you walked it, I saw it and I didn't even see what it said. But now that I see what it said, I like it even more. It's definitely well put together. I will absolutely be ordering one for you got the V-necks? I like V-necks. I'm a V-neck person. Can you make that happen?
No, I do not have the V-neck.
Okay, it's okay.
I can do a V-neck.
You want to cut it out for me?
Just take a scissors.
No. But yeah, I can cut it out. And if you want like a particular color, we can kind of change it. Something different.
No, this is my favorite color. So this is exactly what I'll be purchasing. Yeah. It's okay. I'll
don't worry about it, Mark. We're going to buy it regardless. Okay, don't worry about it.
So I really want to thank you so much.
Yes.
This is definitely a different type of show for us. And I thank you so much for giving us an opportunity to share your story with our viewers.
Yes.
I hope that this reaches people that will be able to really make some changes. Meek Mill. We're going to be tagging you, sir. JC, we're going to be tagging you, sir. Charlemagne the Divine.
Let's talk about it.
Yes, let's get into it, guys. This is our future.
Yeah.
And what this young man is doing is absolutely amazing. And we appreciate you. We sincerely wish you all the best.
Yes.
We definitely want to make sure that we get all of your information. We're going to have all of his information, which we'll have it up and on our website, so that you guys will be able to keep in touch and see what you can do to help and be a part of change.
Absolutely.
Right.
So thanks again, Mark, for being here with us.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed this.
So wonderful. So guys, to drop us a line, reach out to us, like, subscribe, comment. We are here. We are everywhere. YouTube, SoundCloud.
You know what we forgot to do? I didn't do my Axe These Nuts dance.
It's okay.
It's not too late. Come on. Let's see.
Come on.
Okay, ready?
Ready?
And go.
Axe These Nuts.
Hey, that was it, Marq. This is all she does. She just does the 1-2.
Hashtag Ask These Nuts, guys. If you have any questions for us, anything you want us to discuss, don't forget to hit hashtag Ask These Nuts. We are on SoundCloud, Facebook, Google Play, the Apple thing one,
Apple iTunes,
YouTube. Guys, we're everywhere. Because we're taking over.